There is belief, and then there is skepticism. And between those two lies a vast territory of questions and the unknown. But what if reality is far more complex than we've been willing to perceive? And what if the stories that we dismissed as myth and legend hold the keys to understanding consciousness? From ghostly encounters to mysterious lights in the sky, humanity has always sensed there was something more out there. Some call it the paranormal, and others call it the divine. Some search the stars for answers, while others look within. They are all connected, threads in the grand tapestry of life. But we stand at a place where the fabric between realities is much thinner than you might think, because this is Crossroads of the Veil. Tonight we follow a path that feels both familiar and deeply unsettling. We're searching for a ghost you already know. She is an image burned into our nightmares, a ghost story whispered in the dark. She is a woman, always dressed in white. That white dress might be a beautiful wedding gown, now a symbol of broken promises. Or it could be a simple burial shroud she can never remove. Her face, if you see it at all, is a mask of pure, unending sadness. Her voice, if you hear it, is a freezing wail on the wind. It's a sound of such profound sorrow that it becomes a permanent part of the place she haunts. She is the White Lady, but her name alone doesn't capture her story. This is because she isn't a single ghost, bound to one old castle or one forgotten road. She is an echo, a pattern, a tragic idea that repeats across centuries and all over the world. Her name and the details may change, but the core story of heartbreak and horror remains the same. She is the enduring, powerful image of a female ghost whose story is defined by terrible tragedy, bottomless sadness, and a terrifying righteous need for revenge. We hear her mournful cry in the tale of La Llorona, the weeping woman, who haunts dark rivers in Mexico, forever searching for the children she lost. We see her silent, floating form in the cold stone halls of old German castles. Her appearance there is a warning that a noble family is about to suffer a loss. Her story is like a massive quilt, woven from the tears of heartbroken women from every corner of the world. So, who is she? Is she the cursed ghost of an ancestor, a single soul trapped by one terrible event? Is she a rejected lover, whose affection curdled into rage after a betrayal? Is she a grieving mother whose loss was so absolute it shattered the barrier between life and death? Or is she something older, more elemental, a force of nature wearing a human disguise? Is she a symbol of our deepest fears about loss, grief, and the parts of history that refuse to stay buried? Tonight we will attempt to answer these questions. We will follow the trail of this restless spirit, from European palaces to dusty American backroads. We'll examine her not just as a ghost, but as a mirror reflecting the cultures that tell her story. We'll look at her as a piece of folklore, a symbol that springs from a deep, shared part of our minds. We'll see her through the lens of history, which reveals that her story is often the story of women who were silenced and victimized in life. And finally, we'll ask the most chilling question of all. What if she's real? What if the sightings and sounds are exactly what they appear to be? This is a story about the ghosts that haunt our world, but it is also about the history that created them. It is a journey into the deep fears and awful truths given a voice by her endless, heartbreaking sorrow. So, turn down the lights and listen closely. The air is growing cold, and a figure in white is beginning to take shape in the darkness. Our journey begins hundreds of years ago in the heart of a dying empire, within the immense, cold stone walls of a German palace. The year is 1598. The air in Berlin, Germany is heavy with the promise of a harsh winter. Inside the sprawling Berliner Schloss, the center of power for the mighty Hohenzollern family, a chill has settled in the halls that is colder than any winter wind. This isn't the cold of the weather, it is the cold of fear, a silence so thick it feels like a shroud. In the grandest bedroom, Elector John George of Brandenburg lies on his deathbed. He is a powerful ruler, but his breath is shallow, his time nearly gone. The entire palace holds its breath with him, waiting. But they are not only waiting for his death, they are waiting for her. In the days before he takes his final shaky breath, she is seen. It begins with a young kitchen maid hurrying through a dark hall late at night. She sees movement ahead and pauses, assuming it's another servant. But as the figure drifts closer, the maid realizes her mistake. It's a tall, silent woman, dressed in glowing white. The woman's face is lost in shadow, but an overwhelming sadness radiates from her. She moves without a sound, as if floating above the stone floor. She doesn't feel like an intruder. She moves with a sense of belonging, a dreaded guest expected for this somber occasion. The maid freezes, her heart hammering in her chest. The figure then turns a corner and vanishes, leaving only an unnatural chill in the air. The next day, the story spreads in hushed whispers. They know who the maid saw. The courtiers, the guards, the servants, they all know her name. They call her the White Lady. Her appearance isn't a surprise, it confirms their deepest fears. Death has sent a messenger. When she appears, a member of the ruling family is about to be taken. For them, her ghostly visit is as certain a sign of death as a doctor's grim diagnosis. This was not her first visit to the Hohenzollern family, nor would it be her last. For centuries, her ghost would reappear, a silent, sorrowful messenger of bad news, a phantom forever linked to the fate of one of Europe's most powerful families. She became part of their family legend. In a twisted way, having a family ghost was a status symbol. It meant your bloodline was so important that even the spirit world was paying close attention. This sighting in 1598 is our starting point. It's the perfect doorway into a much larger mystery, because this type of ghost, this haunting image of a woman in white lost in sorrow, is not just a German story. It can be found everywhere, in nearly every culture. To understand her, to grasp why this image is so powerful, we must examine her from every angle. As a folktale, as a dark reflection of history, and if we are brave enough, as a real ghost. To properly hunt a ghost, you need more than a flashlight and courage. A ghost is more than a sudden fright in the dark. It's a story, it's a memory. It's a collection of feelings so powerful they survive even after death. To hunt the White Lady, you need a map that shows where these stories originate and why they endure. Our map for tonight's journey has 3 distinct paths. First, we must look at these stories as folklore and myths. Think of folklore as the collective dreams of a culture. The stories we repeat reveal our fears, our values, and our view of the world. The psychologist Carl Jung believed all humans are born with a shared hidden memory he called the collective unconscious. This shared memory is filled with universal patterns or characters that he called archetypes. An archetype is like a character blueprint that everyone everywhere instinctively understands, like the wise old man, the brave hero, or the cunning trickster. The White Lady is a powerful archetype, and she often fits the terrifying blueprint of what Jung called the terrible mother. We all understand the concept of a caring, protective mother who provides comfort. The terrible mother is her dark reflection. She is the mother figure born from pain, rage, and betrayal. She represents the fear of a mother who destroys instead of nurtures. She embodies the terror of having the one person who should be your ultimate safety become the source of ultimate danger. This deep, primal fear is why stories about a mother who harms her children, like La Llorona, are so profoundly disturbing to us. We can also analyze how these stories are constructed. If you strip them to their basic elements, they all follow the same haunting pattern. A woman is deeply wronged, usually betrayed by a man she loves. This betrayal drives her to a terrible act, often taking her own life or even the lives of her children. Because of her actions, her spirit is transformed. She becomes a ghost, doomed to haunt a location forever, trapped in a loop of grief and rage. The details may change. It could be a castle in Scotland or a bridge in Ohio, but the skeleton of the story is always the same. This proves we're dealing with a fundamental type of story that connects with something deep inside all of us. Second, we must look at history. These ghosts did not just materialize from nowhere. They are often born from the real-life suffering of women. For most of history, women were often treated like property, used as pawns in political arrangements, or valued only for their ability to produce heirs. The White Lady's story is often a commentary on that female experience. Her tales are filled with women who are hurt, betrayed, forced into marriages, and left powerless. From this viewpoint, her transformation into a terrifying ghost is not a curse. It's a form of rebellion. It is her way to finally seize the power she was denied in life. A woman who was ignored and abused while alive becomes something to be feared and respected in death. Her wail is no longer a helpless cry of sadness, it's a protest against the injustice she endured. You cannot understand La Llorona without knowing the deep historical trauma of the Spanish conquest of Mexico, and the complex role women played in that violent cultural collision. The ghost story preserves real history within it. Finally, we must ask the central question: what if it's real? What if we set aside folklore and history and treat these as reports of actual paranormal encounters? From this perspective, the White Lady is not a symbol. She is an experience. People all over the world report seeing a figure that matches her description. Ghost hunters have terms for these events. Ghosts like the White Lady of the Hohenzollerns, who appear before a death in the family, are sometimes called crisis apparitions. This is a specific haunting where a spirit is seen by family members at a time of crisis, like the moment of death, even if they are miles away. It's as if the intense emotional energy of dying allows a spirit to manifest to those it was connected to. Then there's the stone tape theory. This idea suggests hauntings are not thinking spirits, but more like a recording. The theory proposes that highly emotional events, like a murder or suicide, can be recorded into the physical environment, the stones of a castle, or the wood of a bridge. Then, when conditions are right, this recording plays back, allowing people to see or hear the tragic event. This could explain hauntings tied to a specific place, like the Berliner Schloss, or the many crybaby bridges across America, where people report hearing the same sounds repeatedly. A more spiritual interpretation would call the White Lady a classic earthbound spirit, the soul of a person who cannot or will not move on after death. They are trapped here on earth by unresolved pain, guilt, or anger. Her endless weeping and searching aren't just a story. They are the literal actions of a soul caught in a loop of its own trauma, reliving the worst moments of her life over and over. With these three tools, folklore, history, and paranormal theory, our investigation can begin. Each one offers a different piece of the puzzle. We'll start our hunt in the grand castles of Europe, where the White Lady first emerged as a ghost of the elite, a phantom with a royal mission. In old Europe, the White Lady was not just any ghost. She was a ghost with a purpose, a phantom with a prestigious background. She was tied to the fate of powerful noble families, and her appearance was like a supernatural news bulletin, announcing major events like births, and more frequently, deaths. Having a family ghost was a dark honor. It made a family's history seem more momentous, as if their destiny was so special it was a matter of cosmic, supernatural concern. A king's death was not merely a medical event, it was something that could summon a spirit from the other side. The most famous of these aristocratic ghosts is the White Lady of the House of Hohenzollern, the spirit we met at the beginning. For over 500 years, from the 1400s to the 1900s, seeing her was considered a certain sign that a family member was about to die. But who was she in life? A ghost this persistent, this tied to one family, must have an origin story. The legend of the White Lady offers two primary suspects, two tragic women whose stories became woven into the myth. The first and more dramatic candidate is Kunigunde von Orlamunde, a countess from the 1300s. The legend is a gruesome tale of passion and horror. The widowed Kunigunde fell in love with a nobleman named Albrecht, a member of the Hohenzollern family. Desperate to marry him, she confessed her feelings. He supposedly told her he would marry her if only 4 eyes did not stand in the way. Kunigunde, blinded by love, made a terrible miscalculation. Albrecht was speaking metaphorically. He meant his disapproving parents. Their 4 eyes were the obstacle. But Kunigunde took his words literally. She thought he meant her own 2 children. In a desperate act, believing it was the only path to his love, she murdered them. When Albrecht discovered what she had done, he was horrified and rejected her. Consumed by a soul-staining guilt, Kunigunde died of a broken heart. Her spirit, however, found no peace. It was cursed to haunt his family's castles, her appearance forever heralding their deaths, an eternal reminder of her sin. It's a powerful story, a perfect explanation for a sorrowful ghost. There is one major problem: it isn't true. Historical records are clear. The real Kunigunde van Orlamunde had no children. The story was fabricated later to give the ghost a dramatic backstory. A much more likely candidate is Anna Sidel, the longtime mistress of a ruler named Joachim II of Brandenburg in the 1500s. Anna lived with Joachim and had children with him. Their relationship was an accepted fact at court. On his deathbed, Joachim made his son and heir, Johann, swear a solemn oath to protect and care for Anna after he was gone. Johann made the promise, but he had no intention of keeping it. As soon as his father died, Johann broke his vow. He had Anna arrested and thrown into the dark Spandau Citadel prison. She was left there to rot and died alone years later, a victim of cruel political betrayal. Now connect this to our opening story. The legend claims that in 1598, the ghost of Anna Sidel, a woman betrayed and wronged, appeared as a figure in white to the very man who had broken his sacred promise, Elector Johann. 8 days after her ghostly appearance, he was dead. Her story is not about a mother's sin, but about betrayal and justice. The terrible injustice she suffered gave her spirit the power to announce the deaths of her tormentor's family, a ghostly reminder of a broken oath. Over the next few hundred years, sightings of the White Lady were meticulously documented. In 1619, 3 young pages working in the castle saw her in a hall. Thinking she was a living woman, one of them made a rude comment. The story says she turned her sad eyes on him and struck him dead on the spot. This event transformed her from a passive omen of death into a dangerous, active force. In 1628, she was seen again, but this time she spoke a single chilling phrase in Latin, Veni judico vivos et mortuos, which means, "Come, I judge the living and the dead." With these words, she evolved from a messenger to a divine judge, a supernatural being with a heavenly mission. Perhaps the most terrifying sighting occurred in 1857 at Pillnitz Castle. A guard on his lonely night watch looked out into the castle grounds, which were shrouded in a thick fog. He saw a frightening procession emerge from the mist. At the front was the White Lady. Following her were 4 headless men carrying an open, empty casket. The guard watched, frozen with terror, and saw that inside the casket was another headless body wearing a royal Prussian medal, an honor worn only by the king. The vision was seen as a direct, horrifying prophecy. 3 months later, the prophecy was fulfilled when King Frederick William IV suffered a major stroke that ended his reign. The existence of multiple origin stories tells us something important. The ghost's true identity was less important than the function she served. The powerful Hohenzollern family used her legend as a form of supernatural public relations. Having a family ghost who predicts death makes the family seem more significant. It turns a natural tragedy like death into a supernaturally destined event, suggesting that the fate of this family is being monitored by the spirit world. While the Hohenzollern ghost was a messenger of doom, the story of the White Lady of Bohemia is more complex and even inspiring. Her story isn't rooted in a mythical sin, but in the documented suffering of a woman named Perchta of Rosenberg. Perchta was a noblewoman born around 1429. Like most noblewomen of her time, her life was not her own. She was forced to marry a cruel and abusive man, Jan of Liechtenstein, for political reasons. This wasn't merely a bad marriage, it was a living nightmare. Jan, along with his cruel mother and sister, treated Perchta horribly. We know the details of her suffering because her desperate letters to her family still exist today. They are heartbreaking. In one letter, she begs her father, writing, "Take me away from these evil people and you will be praised, as if you released a soul from purgatory." Her family, for political reasons, did nothing. They abandoned her to her personal hell. The legend of Perchta as a ghost begins at the end of her husband's life. On his deathbed, consumed by guilt, Jan begged Perchta for her forgiveness. In a stunning act of defiance, she refused. She would not grant him the peace of her forgiveness. With his last breath, he cursed her, declaring that her spirit would wander her own family's castles forever. After she died, worn down by her sad life, Perchta's ghost did return. But the curse had an unexpected outcome. She did not return as a sad, weeping phantom. She became a powerful protector and guardian of her family, the very family that had abandoned her. When she appeared, it was to signal the family's future. If her ghost appeared wearing white gloves, it was a sign of good fortune, like a birth or a wedding. But if she appeared wearing black gloves, it meant death or disaster was coming. She was not just a messenger. She was a judge of her family's fate, a matriarch from beyond the grave. In the most famous story, she would supposedly appear by the cradle of a baby heir named Peter Vach. His nanny had a habit of falling asleep, and when she did, the ghostly figure of Perchta would materialize and watch over the sleeping baby, protecting him until the nanny awoke. Perchta's legend is a powerful story of posthumous justice. It is the tale of a woman who was a powerless victim in life, abandoned by the family that should have protected her. Yet in death, she becomes a powerful and respected motherly spirit. Her supernatural story begins with her great act of defiance, refusing to forgive her abuser. This act seems to transform her. The legend is like a cultural revision of a historical injustice. It takes the tragic story of a suffering woman and rewrites it into the saga of an eternal guardian, granting her the power and respect in death that she never had in life. As we move from the cold castles of European nobility to the misty, ancient countryside, the White Lady transforms. She becomes less tied to a specific person and more connected to the natural world. She becomes more like an element of nature, a spirit of the wind, water, and earth. She is less the ghost of an individual and more the human face of nature's mysterious and dangerous power. The Banshee is one of the most famous and feared supernatural beings in Irish folklore. Her name comes from the Old Irish words meaning woman of the fairy mound. This name connects her directly to the ancient magical hills believed to be gateways to the Celtic otherworld, the home of fairies and spirits. To be a woman of the fairy mound meant she was not human, but a being from that other more powerful realm. Her most famous characteristic is her cry. It is not a human sound. It is a sharp, heartbreaking wail, a sound of unearthly sorrow that, when heard, is a certain sign that someone in a family is about to die. The legend of the Banshee is thought to have originated from a human tradition, the practice of keening. In old Ireland, professional female mourners called keeners were hired for funerals. These women would sing heartbreaking, wailing songs for the deceased to express the community's grief. It was a deeply emotional performance. Over time, folklore transformed this real-world practice into a supernatural one. The oldest and greatest Irish families were said to have their own personal fairy woman who would perform this sacred duty. When a member of that family was about to die, even if they were miles away, the family's banshee would be heard wailing in the hills around their ancestral home, her otherworldly cry announcing the tragic news. She only cries for the oldest Gaelic families. To hear the banshee was a sign of a family's ancient connection to the land and the magic of Ireland. The banshee's appearance can vary. Sometimes she is a beautiful young woman with long flowing hair dressed in white or gray. Other times she appears as a noble-looking older woman. In her most terrifying form, she is a frightening old hag with a skeletal face, long stringy hair, and eyes fiery red from centuries of weeping. But no matter her form, her defining feature is always her cry, a sound of pure, otherworldly sorrow that warns a family that death is coming for them. The banshee does not cause death. She is a messenger, announcing a fate that has already been sealed. She is a figure of immense sadness, not evil. Her story illustrates how a community's shared human grief can evolve into a national myth. Her cry is more than a warning. It is a symbol of a family's ancient, magical connection to the Irish landscape. She is the voice of the land itself, weeping for the loss of its children. If the banshee is a figure of pure sadness, the Rusalka of Slavic folklore is a more dangerous and complex entity. Her story reveals how a benevolent, life-giving nature spirit from pagan times can be twisted by new beliefs into a malevolent, predatory ghost. In her earliest form in ancient Slavic paganism, the Rusalka was a type of nymph, a gentle spirit of water and new life. She was a positive force of nature. In the spring, it was believed she and her sisters would emerge from the rivers and lakes where they slept all winter. They would climb into the branches of willow and birch trees, and their long wet hair would drip water onto the fields below. blessing the crops and ensuring a bountiful harvest. They were beautiful life givers, vital to the community. But when Christianity arrived, this pagan spirit was demonized. The old gods were recast as evil monsters. The Rusalka became merged with the Christian concept of the unclean dead, the restless souls of people who died unnatural deaths like suicides or murder victims, and were denied a Christian burial. The modern Rusalka, the one known in scary stories, is the ghost of a young woman who died a tragic death, usually by drowning. The story often goes that she was abandoned by a lover and in her grief drowned herself. In other versions, she was murdered by her lover, her body thrown into a river. This new, tragic backstory transformed her. The gentle life giver became a deadly life taker. She retained her stunning beauty, a pale young woman with long flowing green or golden hair and no visible pupils in her eyes. But her purpose became purely malevolent. She now haunts rivers, lakes, and the adjacent forests. She uses her beautiful voice to sing, luring young men, especially unfaithful ones, to their doom. Once a man is under her spell, she draws him to the water's edge. She will then either drag him into the water and drown him, entangling him in her supernaturally long hair, or she will tickle him to death, her light touch driving him into insane, breathless laughter until his heart gives out. Rusalki were most active during Rusalka week in early June. During this time, it was considered deadly to go swimming, as the spirits would leave the water to walk on land. They would climb into willow trees and swing, and if any humans saw them, they would be forced to dance with the spirits. The dance would continue, fueled by supernatural energy, until the human victim died of exhaustion. The Rusalka is a potent cautionary tale. The original pagan nature spirit, a symbol of life, was combined with the Christian idea of a damned soul. The result is a terrifying figure that represents the dangers of the wild natural world, of female sexuality, and of dying without the blessing of the church. She is a perfect storm of a culture's fears, a beautiful monster created at the collision point of two different belief systems. When the White Lady story crossed the Atlantic, it was transformed by the violent clash of European and Native American cultures. The legends of the White Lady in the Americas are not tales of old royal families or pagan nature spirits. They are stories soaked in the blood and trauma of conquest, racial conflict, and the loss of entire civilizations. La Llorona, which means the weeping woman in Spanish, is the most famous and significant White Lady figure in the Americas. Her story is a terrifying ghost tale told to children across Latin America to prevent them from wandering near water after dark. While details vary, the core story is simple, brutal, and unforgettable. A beautiful woman, often named Maria, is betrayed by the man she loves, who is frequently a wealthy Spaniard that leaves her for a woman of higher social standing. In a fit of insane rage and grief, Maria takes her children to the river and drowns them. The moment she does it, her madness is replaced by an overwhelming horror. She tries to save them, but it is too late. Consumed by guilt, she then drowns herself in the same river. Because of her terrible sin, she is denied entry into heaven. Her spirit is cursed to wander the earth forever, searching along riverbanks and wailing her painful cry into the night. To hear her cry is a terrible omen, and to see her is to invite your own death. The incredible power of this legend comes from its deep, complex history, which predates the arrival of the first Spanish ships in Mexico. Experts have found clear connections between La Llorona and powerful goddesses of the Aztec people. One of the most important was Tihuacuatl, the snake woman. She was a fierce goddess of motherhood and fertility, but she was also linked to an omen that foretold the fall of the Aztec Empire. Ancient Aztec texts describe how in the years before the Spanish conquistadors arrived, a weeping woman was heard wailing in the empty streets of the Aztec capital late at night. She was crying for her children, the Aztec people, and warning them of their coming destruction. After the Spanish conquest, this powerful indigenous goddess was, like the Rusalka, turned into a demon by the new Christian authorities. Her story of prophetic weeping was then merged with the real historical life of a famous and controversial woman, La Malinche. La Malinche was a Nahua woman given to the Spanish conqueror Hernán Cortés. Because she was multilingual, she served as his translator, advisor, and partner. She gave birth to his son Martin, who is often called the first person of mixed indigenous and Spanish heritage. In modern Mexican culture, La Malinche is a deeply conflicted figure. On one hand, she is seen as the symbolic mother of the modern Mexican people. On the other, she is often viewed as the ultimate traitor, the woman who aided the Spanish in destroying her own culture. The very word Malinchista in Mexico today means someone who betrays their own people. The legend of La Llorona, as we know it today, is a powerful fusion of all these elements. It takes the ancient weeping of the goddess Chihuahua, the story of a native woman betrayed by a powerful Spaniard from the life of La Malinche, and the child murder motif common in European folktales, and melts them into one terrifying tale. But this new ghost story serves a specific cultural function. It cleverly takes the massive national trauma of the Spanish conquest, an event of war, disease, and genocide, and reframes it as the personal psychological failure of a single monstrous woman. The story of imperial violence is hidden inside a simpler tale of jealousy and maternal rage. In this way, the legend of La Llorona effectively shifts the blame for the destruction of the indigenous world away from the historical conquerors and onto a monstrous female figure, hiding the complex reality of colonial violence behind the ghost story of a bad mother. The core painful elements of the La Llorona story, weeping, a child-killing mother, and water, have proven to be incredibly adaptable. In the United States, this story has broken away from its grand historical origins and taken root in the modern American landscape in a more humble, localized form. The folklore of crybaby bridges is the everyday version of the White Lady story. It has been stripped of its goddesses, kings, and conquerors and placed in the ordinary settings of rural county roads and forgotten backwoods. Across the United States, there are hundreds of bridges that share this name and a chillingly similar legend. The details change to fit local history, but the basic story is almost always the same. A terrible tragedy involving a mother and her baby occurred on or near this bridge. In most versions, a distraught mother, perhaps fleeing an abusive husband, or shamed by having a child out of wedlock, stops her car on the bridge and throws her baby from the railing into the dark water below. In many versions, she then takes her own life by jumping in after the child. The haunting that follows is almost always auditory, not visual. It's not about seeing a ghost, but hearing one. Visitors brave enough to go to the bridge late at night and follow the local ritual, which might involve flashing headlights or honking a horn, report hearing the unmistakable, unsettling sound of a baby crying, seemingly coming from under the bridge or from the water. These legends have become local tests of courage for teenagers and popular destinations for amateur ghost hunters. They demonstrate how powerful and persistent the weeping woman narrative is. The core elements, a mother, the tragic death of a child, a body of water, and an eternal sound of grief, are so potent to our psyche that they don't need a grand historical narrative to survive. They can attach themselves to any dark, lonely place. The grand castle moat of the White Lady and the sacred river of La Llorona are replaced by a simple concrete overpass on a country road. The setting doesn't matter. The horror of a mother's sorrow and a child's cry creates our most powerful and enduring ghost stories. While we think of the White Lady as a ghost from folklore, the deep psychological patterns that define her, vengeful rage, monstrous grief, and endless sorrow, were born long before our modern ghost stories. They originated in the myths of ancient Greece. The stories of three particular women from Greek mythology, Medea, Lamia, and Niobe, are not ghost stories, but they are crucial because they establish the core motivations, the emotional DNA, that later folklore would transform into supernatural hauntings. They are the psychological blueprints for every White Lady legend that would follow. Medea is the ultimate terrifying example of a woman who twists the sacred bond of motherly love into a horrific weapon of revenge. Medea was a powerful sorceress who betrayed her family and country to help the Greek hero Jason steal the Golden Fleece. She sacrificed everything for him, but after their adventure, when they had settled and had 2 sons, Jason cast her aside. He decided to marry a younger princess to improve his social standing. Faced with this ultimate betrayal and public humiliation, Medea's reaction was not sadness. It was a cold, calculated, horrifying act of vengeance. She decided that to truly make Jason suffer, she had to destroy his future and everything he held dear. After using her magic to murder his new bride, she committed the act that has made her myth so infamous. She killed the 2 young sons she shared with Jason. This was not an act of madness or a crime of passion. In the famous play by Euripides, Medea's choice is portrayed as a deliberate, monstrous, and rational decision. She understands that killing her children will cause her immense pain, but she also knows it will inflict an even greater, unlivable suffering upon the man who betrayed her. She chose her revenge over her own children. Medea provides the essential template for the vengeful mother. She is the original model for later figures like La Llorona, women who kill their children in a fit of rage born from a man's betrayal. If Medea is the active planner of her own revenge, the story of Lamia provides the model of the victim whose suffering is so profound it physically and spiritually twists her into a monster. Lamia was a beautiful queen who caught the eye of Zeus, king of the gods, and became his lover. When Zeus's jealous wife Hera discovered the affair, she enacted a terrible, cruel revenge. Hera murdered all of Lamia's children. In the most horrific version of the myth, Hera's magic forced Lamia to eat her own children. This unbearable loss drove Lamia insane. The grief was so absolute that it transformed her. She changed from a beautiful queen into a horrific, child-eating demon. She began to hunt the children of other mothers, driven by a twisted need to soothe her own unending sorrow by inflicting a similar loss on others. Lamia's myth establishes a crucial pattern for the White Lady story: grief as the direct cause of monstrosity. She is not inherently evil. Her evil is a direct result of the terrible injustice inflicted upon her. Her attacks on other children are a warped reflection of her own maternal loss. This powerful theme echoes down through the centuries in later legends, where the weeping woman is often seen as a threat not just to the men who wronged her, but also to innocent children, as if she is trying to replace the ones she lost. While Medea represents revenge and Lamia represents monstrous grief, the story of Niobe provides the third blueprint: pure, eternal, and inconsolable sorrow. Niobe's tragedy came not from betrayal, but from her own pride. Niobe was the proud mother of 14 beautiful children. She boasted that she was superior to the goddess Leto, who had only 2 children, the twin gods Apollo and Artemis. This was a grave insult to a goddess, and the punishment was swift and absolute. As payback, Leto sent her 2 divine children to exact revenge. Apollo, the god of the silver bow, killed all 7 of Niobe's sons. Artemis, the huntress, killed all 7 of her daughters. In a single horrific day, Niobe was left completely childless. She was overwhelmed by a grief so deep it was beyond human endurance. Seeing her unending pain, the gods took a strange form of pity on her. They transformed her into a stone formation on the side of a mountain. This rock, which from a distance resembles a woman's face, became known as the Weeping Rock. Even today, when rainwater trickles down its face from a spring within the rock, it is said to be Niobe, still weeping for her lost children thousands of years later. Niobe becomes a permanent feature of the landscape, a literal monument to a mother's grief. She is not a vengeful ghost or a predatory demon. She is sorrow itself, turned to stone, weeping forever. Her story provides the template for the purely sorrowful aspect of the White Lady, the endless weeping and the deep eternal connection to a haunted place. Together, these 3 Greek myths provide the psychological foundation for nearly every White Lady legend. They are not ghosts, but they are the source code for the ghosts. Medea gives us the motive of revenge against betrayal. Lamia gives us the theme of grief, turning a victim into a monster. And Niobe gives us the haunting image of sorrow as an eternal force that can stain a place forever. Originating from the folk traditions of England and Scotland, the haunting murder ballad known as The Cruel Mother offers one of the most direct and socially powerful versions of the mother who kills her child story. Unlike the grand myths of Greek gods or the royal omens of European nobles, this ballad is a raw, personal, and deeply uncomfortable narrative. It is rooted not in divine punishment or supernatural curses, but in the harsh realities of life for women in Old Britain. The story told in the ballad's many versions is brutally simple and tragically believable. A woman, often from a good family, secretly gives birth to 1 or 2 illegitimate children. To hide her actions and protect herself from the overwhelming social shame that would ruin her life, she commits a terrible act. She kills the newborns, often with a small knife, and buries their bodies in a lonely place like a forest or a churchyard. As she is returning home, believing she has escaped her crime, she sees the ghostly figures of her babies. They appear as beautiful children playing. At first, she doesn't recognize them. Feeling a pang of motherly instinct, she remarks that if they were her children, she would dress them in fine clothes. It is then that they confront her with her crime. In the chilling lyrics, they say, "O mother dear, when we were thine, you did not treat us so." They then inform her that while they reside in heaven, she is damned to hell for her actions. The mother's motivation in this story is not Medea's fiery rage. It is a cold, calculated fear of social ruin. In a society where a woman's entire value and survival depended on her chastity and her ability to secure a good marriage, having a child out of wedlock was a social and economic catastrophe. It meant being disowned, ostracized, and left with no way to support herself or her child. The mother in the ballad is trapped by a cruel and hypocritical social code. Her monstrous act, as horrible as it is presented as a desperate attempt to save herself in a world with no safety net for a woman in her position. The supernatural element of the ballad is its moral and emotional core. The return of the children's spirits is not a random haunting, it is a moment of divine justice. The ghosts are not passive, weeping victims. They are her accusers and her judges. In their ghostly forms, they possess a knowledge and power they never had in their short lives. They know about their own murder, their salvation in heaven, and their mother's damnation. They are acting as agents of a higher power. The Cruel Mother is powerful social criticism disguised as a ghost story. On one level, it functions as a clear morality tale, a stark warning that condemns infanticide as a mortal sin leading to eternal damnation. But at the same time, the ballad subtly criticizes the cruel society that pushed the woman to such a desperate act. It explores the tragic clash between human desperation and an unforgiving social law, using the chilling, innocent voices of ghostly children to deliver a final verdict on both a mother's terrible sin and the society that helped create it. What have we discovered on our journey through the shadows? What is the common thread connecting the royal phantom of a German castle, the weeping goddess of the ancient Aztecs, and the vengeful water spirit of a Slavic river? After chasing her echo across centuries and continents, it is clear the White Lady is far more than a simple ghost. She is a deep and enduring global pattern. She is a ghostly figure whose story is woven from eternal tragedy, deep-seated social injustice, and our fundamental human need to give a face and a voice to overwhelming sadness. Tonight we traced her evolution. We saw that she began in the ancient world, not as a ghost but as a set of psychological blueprints in Greek myths. Medea's terrifying revenge, Lamia's grief-fueled monstrosity, and Niobe's eternal sorrow. In the pagan pre-Christian world, she was a spirit of nature, a force of life. With the rise of noble families and the spread of Christianity, she was transformed into the specific ghost of a historical woman, her personal tragedy repurposed as a supernatural omen for a powerful family. In the violent creation of the Americas through colonial conquest, she became a symbol of cultural pain and loss, as the prophetic weeping of the Aztec goddess Tzohuacótl was twisted and merged with European folklore to become the tormented spirit of La Llorona. Finally, in our modern era, her story has become democratized. She has broken free from a single grand narrative and now haunts the lonely rural bridges of America, her legend endlessly reborn in small towns everywhere. Across all this time and all these cultures, from ancient Greece to modern Ohio, the White Lady remains, above all else, an unquiet spirit. She is unquiet in her endless, restless weeping and her constant searching, but she is also unquiet in a deeper sense. Her story is a disruption. It is a supernatural refusal to let the pain of the silenced, the victimized, and the forgotten be erased by history. Whether we see her as a cautionary tale designed to control women by illustrating the monstrous consequences of stepping outside social norms, or as a symbol of rebellion against the male-dominated forces that crushed her, her haunting presence serves as a constant, chilling reminder of the unresolved pain that lies just beneath the surface of our history. The incredible persistence of the White Lady proves that some sorrows are too deep to be truly buried, and some injustices are too great to be fully silenced. Instead, they are given a story. They are given a name. They are given a white dress and an eternal voice that wails on the wind, and they haunt us still. Until next time, keep your eyes open to the shadows, because you never know who or what you might find waiting there. As we step back from the crossroads, remember, the story doesn't end here, because this is just the beginning. Searching for the knowledge and wisdom to unravel the mysteries of our universe. Unexplained sightings, spirits, and science. They are all connected in the grand tapestry of life. So remember, keep pulling at the threads, because this has been Crossroads of the Veil.